Tell us a little bit about Turkey Hughes. He was the athletics director when you were here and did a lot of other things as well.
Yes. Well, like I said, I knew Mr. Hughes as a young boy growing up, and where I was on Kentucky Avenue, and as you alluded, our current president, Mr. Whitlock, was a Kentucky Avenue boy, so I guess Kentucky Avenue did okay. But just around the corner on Westover was Mr. Hughes's home, and Mr. Hughes, or Turkey as he was better known, his son Alan was a tremendous athlete, and basketball player, football player, Madison Model, and went to UK and played 1 year of basketball over there, and then he went to the Naval Academy. So early in life, I guess 12, 13, Mr. Hughes on Sunday would go up to the Weaver Health Building where his office was to open the gym up. He had to go up and work on Sunday afternoons. And his son Alan and Jimmy Hinkle and several of the neighborhood kids would go up and play in the gym in the afternoon. And it was years later that I finally figured out that he really went up to work some so that he could open a gym up for the local kids to play. That was one of the things that he did.
Of course, that's a real contrast with then and now. Because
well, I think so.
Everybody be worried about lawsuits and
lawsuits and liability,
yeah.
and all of those things now precludes a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
But he had many hats that he wore. He was at Eastern 43 years. At that time, he was the baseball coach, and I think he was the baseball coach for all 43 years. He was the athletic director. He was the chairman of Health, Physical Education, and Recreation. His assistants in all of this was Miss Minnie Coleman, who was the, I guess, departmental secretary, athletic director, secretary. Taught some classes or monitored classes when a faculty member was gone on an athletic trip. She would administer tests and take a roll. She was in charge of the athletic ticket office. I think there was a couple student workers that worked with her. I don't think there was any other full-time people. She was in charge of the concession stand in the old hangar football stadium and all of those things. But I say, Mr. Hughes also taught, I'm not sure how much, I think it was at least half-time. He taught safety and first aid. He taught his theory of baseball class, which was very popular and very academic. You had to be there, you had to know the rules, you had to know when to send the runner from first to second. Very technical on it. It's not like some of the athletic coaching classes that you read about and hear about whether the athletes go to class or not. You were in class with Mr. Hughes. Very academic oriented, of course, being the chairman of the Health and Physical Education and Recreation Department. To my knowledge, about all of his baseball players graduated.
Glenn Presnell was the football coach.
Glenn Presnell was the football coach at that time.
And then Paul McBrayer was
the basketball coach. And Jim Bechtold was assistant.
McBrayer was a legend and still is. Tell us a little bit about your memories of him.
Coach McBrayer was a great basketball player himself. I think he was from Carlisle, Kentucky, and he played at UK. He was one of the first All-Americans. At one time I thought he was the first, but he was not. I think Agaseo was, but he was third or fourth All-American basketball player. And he was an assistant coach with Coach Rupp at the start of his coaching career. And matter of fact, he had the freshman team, and there are still some of the older fellows that still had a Coach McBrayer Appreciation Day every year over at UK, and then some of them have come over and joined the Eastern group. But World War II, Coach McBrayer went into service. And I think just before that, he and Coach Rupp had not gotten along real well. Coach Rupp had been, I think, under the weather, and McBrayer had taken him to the NIT and won the NIT, and some of the newspapers started saying McBrayer was the reason Rupp was so successful. Oh, wow. And as all Kentuckians know,
that wouldn't go for well.
Yeah. No, I don't think Coach Rupp reacted very favorably to that. So when Coach McBrayer came back from the service, he no longer had a job at the University of Kentucky. Harry Lancaster had been hired in his place. So Coach McBrayer was hired at Eastern, I think, on a part-time basis. So he lived in Lexington and drove over and just was a basketball coach. And then later on, it became a full-time position, and he did teach a basketball class, and he had an office and a secretary in Weaver Health Building, and Jim Bechtold was his assistant coach. And he took Stateland Hall, which was just a small, almost like a farmhouse on the periphery of campus on the other side of the street from Weaver Health Building, and made that the basketball house. Now, I'm not 100% sure of this, but I think that he furnished it himself. We had, there were bunk beds in there in the big, large rooms, like 4 basketball players per room. They were 7 feet long, you know, to accommodate the size of some of the basketball players. No custodial staff. The basketball team took care of the house. There was an apartment in the house that Coach McBrayer lived in. Strict rules of the house, you know, there were limits.
Was Coach McBrayer single man?
His wife had died previously when they were in Lexington, and so he was single, and he had an apartment there in the house. He knew everything that went on in the house. I had mentioned one time, I think, to you that you know, he had study hall in the house. He very strong academics. He looked at high school recruits, and when they came in and they signed a scholarship, he would help decide your major. You know, we did have a lot of basketball players that were health and physical education interested in going into coaching, but you know, he decided that you know, some like Rupert Stevens from Russell County should be in math because he had a good math background. So Rupert ended up, I think, minoring in math. They were in business. They were some in pre-law. They were in you know, all majors across campus. He had study halls. Someone said one time that you probably would just as soon miss a winning layup against Western as to have a deficiency at midterm. If you had a deficient midterm, you were told about it. You were in study hall under his supervision, and it didn't happen again. The proudest record that he used to allude to was that out of 14 years as the head basketball coach at Eastern University, each and every basketball player, with the exception of one, graduated.